UrbanThings is growing to provide mobile ticketing and public transport data platforms and apps to public transport operators around the globe. Today, we're part of the Paragon ID family, and together we support over 130 million journeys each year. A short word about me. I'm James Lewis. I'm a product manager here at UrbanThings, and it's my job to work with our clients and the market to help shape our product roadmap and look for ways in which we can deliver value to passengers via our products. So I'll now hand over to my speaking partners for some intros, starting with Amy.
Yeah, morning everyone. It's great to see so many of you on this webinar. A bit of background about me. So I work at EtoWorld and I lead the customer success team here. I've got a background in behaviour change, and I've spent about 12 years or so in the transport industry, working through from kind of behaviour change intervention side of things all the way through to the data and the tech side of transit. I'll pass over to Stevie.
Too many of us juggling the slides. Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Stevie Chambers. I am the head of product strategy at Lothian Buses. So Lothian is the largest provider of public transport in Scotland's capital city. We've got about 700 buses, and our comprehensive network provides most parts of the city and the surrounding areas with a service 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And for a bit of context, we carry just over 2 million passenger journeys a week. I'm part of the commercial team at Lothian, which means my role is focused around ticketing and payments, the methods and systems that we use to deliver that, and how it ties into the overall customer experience. So I'll hand back to James.
Apologies, I'm a mute. Thanks, Stevie. Yeah, I think I'm going to hand back to Amy. She's going to kick us off by talking about data and the sources of data.
Great, thank you both. So yeah, to explain the things that I'm going to walk through today. So a bit about the science behind behaviour change and the influence that has over all of our efforts to drive increased patronage on public transport. In terms of the data side of how we deliver a seamless experience for passengers, why that's pretty difficult, but also the success factors that help us to get there. So in terms of the behaviour change side of things, this is a model that is quite often used when looking at behaviour change and how that influences people's choices. And so if we start with the pre-contemplation phase, this is the point at which people don't even know that they would like to make a change yet. And so in our context of looking to increase public transport use, this is likely to be somebody who is driving a private vehicle and they're quite happy doing that at the moment. They don't even know that they would like to try using public transport instead. So the next stage of the change model is where something happens to trigger them to contemplate making a change. So they may be frustrated with congestion. There may be other factors like journey time reliability or health concerns that cause them to consider what their other options are. They then move into a determination phase, and this is where it starts to get really critical in terms of all of our role in this change model, because at the determination phase, people are starting to think, well, what are my other options? What are the bus options, tram, rail, cycling? And they're looking for information that helps them to figure out what their choices are. They then hopefully move into action phase. So they've got the information that they need to make a change in their behaviour, and they decide to make that change. And so they try public transport for the first time. Again, really important point in this change model for all of us, because this relies on them having a really positive experience, because the next stages of the change model are that they either relapse or they maintain their new habit. And the really crucial factors here are that in that action phase, it's going to require many repeated positive experiences of public transport for that person to form a habitual use of public transport. And sadly, it's probably only going to take them one negative experience for them to relapse and think, this isn't working for me, I'll go back to my private vehicle. And so all of this means that our data behind how people find out what their public transport choices are and then when they're using public transport and they're getting real-time updates along the way is really, really critical. So people want to find out what services are available, what the times are, and then along the way they need lots of reinforcement that they are at the right bus stop, that they're catching the right service, that it's going to get them to their end destination as they expect. And the pizza slice here is because there was a really great study that Transport Focus did in 2019, where some of the feedback that they got from people that they surveyed was that passengers want using the bus to be as simple and intuitive as ordering pizza, which is a pretty fair shout in my opinion, right? You think about ordering pizza, you can very easily find an online app, you can track your driver as they're coming to deliver it to your house, and people want that same experience and reassurance when they're catching public transport. So why is it difficult? From a data perspective, I think that this summarizes it really, really well. I think that delivering really great public transport data is one of the most challenging and misunderstood aspects of all of our jobs. And there's actually so many data components that go into delivering a seamless experience. So really basic things like the location of the bus stop, is that accurate in the reference data set? Then is the timetable data up to date and correct? Is the vehicle position data updating regularly? Is the GPS accurate? Does the head sign match what the real-time apps say, or what Google Maps say, or what the on-street signage says? Does the passenger even know whether they're on the right side of the road? You know, it can be quite intimidating when you're trying public transport for the first time and you go along to the stop and actually there's one on either side of the road. Which one do you need to be on? So there's lots of very, very fundamental aspects to the data side of this that means, as I imagine a lot of us well know, that this isn't entirely straightforward. So how do we get there? So success factors that I think are really crucial are really knowing your passengers, investing in quality data, and working with others. In terms of knowing your passengers, really getting under the skin of, you know, what are your local demographics? Who is your target market? What are the things that are going to appeal to them? Thinking back to that change model, how do we get them to contemplate using public transport instead of private car? It could be things like financial drivers or journey time or congestion. What are the things that are local to your area that you can message those potential passengers with? And then also, where do they get their information? Again, this is a little different depending on where in the country you are, but all of these things are likely to be important in some way. So you've got the ubiquitous journey planners like Google Maps and Apple Maps, but then you've got local passenger apps, operator passenger apps, you've got the roadside signage. There's a whole bunch of other different ways that they might try and obtain their data. And so thinking about where they're likely to go to look for that data is really important. So the second thing, and probably the most crucial thing, is investing in quality data. And so for all of the reasons that we just looked at on the previous slide about why it's pretty challenging to do this, the good news is that those who do invest in really high quality real-time data, there's proven increases in patronage following that investment. And so use trusted partners to get your data in shape, I think is definitely worthwhile. Sometimes it's not all that cost effective to try and upskill people within small organizations to really understand complex data standards and how to get the data flowing through as easily as possible. So sometimes it is more cost effective to get some expert help in to identify how your data could be improved and to get it there. And then finally, working with others. So especially in the UK market, because it's largely fragmented and deregulated, no one organisation is going to hold the key to getting this right. And so close cooperation across lots of different partners is really important to delivering consistent data to the passenger and achieving that seamless experience. So I think at this point, I'm going to hand over to James.
Perfect. Thanks, Amy. So as Amy has explored, public transport users require a rich passenger experience powered by data in order to give them the confidence to travel. And as a technology supplier of passenger-facing products, we've therefore had to work on those exact issues, which is the ways in which we can use data to empower the passenger experience. And in order to do that, UrbanThings has needed to start from the ground up and build a technology platform that can use the right data to power passenger experience in our passenger-facing apps. So as the front end of passenger experience, UrbanThings has looked to build a technology platform that is open and therefore able to interface with a wide range of transport data sources and standards and complementary technologies. So today, fresh out the box, our Urban Hub platform consumes a wide range of transport data sources, including Siri RTI feeds, GTFS RT, Buses RTI, BODS, Darwin, to name but a few. And then in order to do that, we work with many data standards. And in addition, as I mentioned, we've integrated several complementary technologies to enrich the passenger experience. For example, Skedco journey planning to boost our journey planning experience, and micro-mobility partners to offer sort of first and last mile solutions. And lastly, Urban Hub offers an open API that enables external integrations, and that opens up a whole world of possibility. But I think the first thing we do is that's the data context. We love data, and we want to consume it, and we have all this data, but what can we do with it in order to power the passenger experience forward? Well, the first thing we do is we surface that data in a really user-friendly way so the passengers can find it easily and engage with it easily. So for example, using the real-time data sources that we've discussed, we present passengers with live arrival information and live vehicle locations, and users can easily select their route to get at that data. But importantly, we layer on top of that data to enrich the passenger experience. So for example, we match and show route branding, so passengers can quickly pick out their route. We match and show vehicle branding, so passengers are confident that an approaching vehicle is actually their vehicle. And in addition, we can also feed in other data, such as current occupancy, in order to help passengers make informed decisions. So, how we present that data, though, is crucial. So for example, we don't just show passengers the occupancy of the bus. First, we feed this through our occupancy predictions engine, so we can model how busy the bus will be when it leaves the stop, which reflects the occupancy of the bus that the passenger will board. And then we present that in a really friendly traffic light system indicating light, medium, and busy occupancy. So I think that represents an important example of how we build the passenger experience on top of the data. We don't simply drop the data on the passenger. We look at how we can guide the passenger through this data so that they can get exactly what they need. And ultimately, this is all focused, as Amy was touching on building trust and confidence in the public transport system. Another important piece of the puzzle, I think, is journey planning. And we've integrated with Skedco as our journey planning partner to supercharge journey plans for passengers. So this unlocks a passenger experience where journey plans can utilize a wealth of data to create bespoke, personalized journey planning experiences. So today, passengers can tailor their journey plans to their personal preferences, and they can choose between, for example, more or less walking. They can set walking speeds. They can set the specific modes of travel that they want to use, whether they want fewer transfers. They can indicate whether they have any accessibility requirements, and then curate the whole journey planning and travel experience around those preferences. But not only that, we can link the journey plan through to the public transport experience in the sense that we can tie those things neatly together by showing the price of the journey and links to tickets via the journey plan. So sort of providing an end-to-end experience. And in addition to those things, we can also drive sustainable travel choices, I think, by showing passengers calorie data and CO2 data. And I think the overarching point of this is that it's only possible with the right data being made available from which you can build journey plans and then building on top of that. And I think one final area I would like to touch on is getting disruptions data to passengers, as I think that represents an area, a sort of world of opportunity for a passenger experience company like UrbanThings, where we can add value. So via the tools that we provide through something like our back office portal to operators, then operators can layer in their own data to something like scheduled data to communicate any disruptions on a route or on the whole network to passengers. And then that's an example of where we take a data set, in this case, the schedule data, and we are empowering the passenger experience by allowing that data to be manipulated and enriched so that we can give passengers an accurate picture of what's happening on the ground. So I think the key here is that a schedule is no good if the bus doesn't show up. So via a combination of RTI and disruptions, we can provide operators with the ability to keep passengers informed and retain that trust in the public transport network. And I think here there are several future opportunities as well to build on this even further, so that we can provide passengers with an accurate, up-to-date, complete picture of the transport services of transport services. So I hope has been illustrated. The data is important, but using the few examples that I've walked through, what we do with that data and how we build the passenger experience on top of that is equally important. And I'll now hand over to Stevie to talk about that from the transport operator perspective.
Thank you, James. So it's worth starting by saying that, well, one of the key sources of data that we identified there as being really important is that real-time information, and our customers have benefited from that for a very long time in Edinburgh. We, along with City of Edinburgh Council, invested heavily in our bus tracker system back in 2004, which initially provided that real-time information via on-street signs on kind of key corridors and busy stops in the city centre. And from the operator's perspective, that gave us massive benefits in terms of our control room being able to manage the network effectively in real time. But it's probably fair to say it wasn't super transformational for customers at that point. You still had to roughly know what time you needed to be at the bus stop before you could find out how close to reality it was actually going to arrive. And that really happened in 2009 when the first third-party apps were launched, kind of using the Bus Tracker API and really giving people access to that information for every stop, wherever they were. And they were very popular and successful, but we decided to kind of bring that in-house back in 2013 with our own travel and information app, and there was a third-party companion app for M-Tickets which launched at the same time. And we continued to develop the app as more useful data streams came online, as the devices became more sophisticated and offered further data streams that you could build in, but basically all built around the key themes of why someone would want to use that. And it is really simple. It is how do I get to where I want to go with public transport? What time will it arrive, and what time will it get me to where I'm going? And if you can crack those three things, you're pretty much more than halfway there. But it is fair to say, and kind of linking back to some of the stuff that Amy was talking about, that the availability of real-time information over time, and especially on very frequent corridors, can completely change people's behavior. So instead of making planned trips, it almost becomes like a sort of turn up and go behavior. And if we then sort of fast forward to post-pandemic, when we've seen massive unprecedented changes in how, when and why customers travel, then this data becomes basically more important than it ever has before. And equally, once customers have had access to real-time data, you can't really take it away again. And indeed, their expectation on the availability of that is increased. So uptime and reliability is absolutely key. And as devices and operating systems continue to evolve and become more sophisticated, we've felt that it's the right time to refresh our customer app offering. And I'm pleased to say that we are working with UrbanThings to bring a new app to market. And I can tell you that it is coming soon. So just a little bit about, basically very high level, but what are the challenges we face as an operator, and how we can then talk about how data plays into that. But obviously, this isn't an Edinburgh-centric issue. This is very common. Congestion is one of the biggest pain points It doesn't need a lot of explaining. If the bus is sat in a queue of traffic, it's not a good experience for customers, for staff, and there's a real cost to that. Additionally, network disruption is linked to congestion, but it's a bit more than just congestion, and it's definitely something that we're prone to in particular. We have a very old city which is built on a challenging geography of valleys and very limited alternative routes when something happens on a key corridor, and there's this kind of ripple effect throughout the rest of the network, which is extremely challenging on I want to say weekly basis, but it probably is more than that. And then, like many other cities, we're an international destination. We get a lot of visitors, and a large proportion of our customers are visitors. And another challenge is, how do we package data in a way that's equally as useful to residents and visitors? They might have different needs, they might have different kind of knowledge of the network, and they interact with us differently. So that's another challenge. How do we basically serve both markets with the same information? And then looking at it from the customer lens, as we've already identified, both Amy and James have referred to this, reliability and trust in public transport is absolutely key. It always amazes me how low the tolerance bar for disruption on a public transport journey is before you give up and decide to never use it again, versus alternative modes, or it seems to be. And I've popped light touch on the slide there because that refers to how we engage with our customers. So most businesses are constantly trying to engage more with their customers, and they're trying to develop more content and layer that to kind of stimulate more clicks or more hits or whatever it is they're trying to do. And while transport operators are very much parts of the communities that they operate in, and we do build engagement in that way, I think it's fair to say that when people are actually using the service, they don't really want to engage at all. They just want to get to where they're going, in fact, with the minimum of engagement, because it's part of the journey to get them to their destination. And the more kind of normal and simple that is, the better. The flip side to that is where something has gone wrong, and they need to be able to get information or report something that has gone wrong in a really easy and convenient way. And convenience and simplicity is obviously super important here. And when it comes to your data, you've actually got lots and lots and lots of different streams. It's moving all the time, it's updating all the time. If you're in a busy urban environment like Edinburgh, then you've got lots of bus stops, you've got lots of routes. So there is actually quite a lot of data to manage there. And everything we can do to make that more convenient and more simple to use. So can we remove taps from the process? Can we simplify the steps to get you to what it is you need to do, and still have all the details sitting there for people that need it, but how are we going to speed that process up effectively? And so moving on from those challenges, if we look at the data that's available, what are the opportunities that we can kind of collectively look to address? And I don't just mean transport operators, but also the people who are collating and providing the data, and the people who are building nice interfaces onto that data. And you kind of return again to that convenience and trust idea. And the trust is a really big one. So I would say that there are opportunities around how we can blend data from the customer alongside the data that we have. There's a fine line around what data you can or would want to collect from customers, and certainly how you would look after it. But consider what you might know about a customer, and linking back to Amy's point around knowing your customers, and whether you could find a way to nudge or proactively notify of disruption. So in our case, we've already identified that disruption is one of our biggest challenges, and part of the difficulty is encouraging people to proactively seek, oh, is there disruption on my journey? And of course, people don't want to do that. So what happens is they only find out when they're at the bus stop waiting for their bus that there's a problem somewhere on the network, or they're on the bus and suddenly it's in a queue and it's going to be there for a long time. So how could we collectively, how can we use data, how can we use customers' data to help us address that point and be a bit more proactive about it? What if we knew that a part of the network is starting to suffer from disruption, and we're combining that with live traffic data that perhaps Google has access to, and perhaps the app that you use knows that you always check the time to go here at this time on the same day, because it's probably taking you home, and in fact you've got a reverse journey planned for the morning. So could we not notify you, and could we not suggest an alternative route plan that might avoid some of that disruption? And sort of to develop that theme a bit more, if we've got ticketing and journey planning in one place, we've seen a lot of drive to kind of simplify the ticketing proposition, and mobile ticketing has played a large part in that. The ability for people to easily purchase a ticket before they get to the bus. And we've also seen advances in tap and cap and contactless payments, which is all designed to kind of remove the sort of potential for friction at the point that someone boards. But if we were combining that with more data, such as what's in your calendar, have you got a reservation that's going to be at this restaurant in town? And are we maybe going to suggest, well, actually, here's a journey plan that will get you there. And if we've tied up a partnership with that restaurant, can we offer you a discounted ticket there? Potential opportunities there for other things. And then the last point is really about us as transport operators, and we're constantly monitoring the data sources we have and shaping the network around that. But a lot of this focus is around giving customers a sensible view onto our data, and of course that's the priority here. But it'd be great if we could also use that window to capture some information back. So when people are planning their journeys, at what point are we finding that they didn't find a journey that was suitable? Do we know if they actually went on and made that journey? Could we put in a one tap did you or not survey at the end of that? Could we put in something that's really unobtrusive and might still be ignored by a lot of people, but if it's super easy, they might just go, yep, sure, and give us a little bit more richness back from that to help with how we shape these experiences. So yeah, that's my thoughts on this piece. I think I'll hand back to James at this point for wrapping things up and questions.
Cool. Thanks, Stevie. Thank you, Amy. Yeah, so I think as we've touched on today, data represents some key challenges, but also some key opportunities. There's a lot of data that we need to source and integrate in order to provide a rich passenger experience. What we do with that data and how we present that data is absolutely crucial and fundamental, and is an area that we, as a technology supplier, need to continue pushing on and working with operators and market stakeholders to seek out those opportunities. And as Stevie's just elaborated on there are a whole world of possibilities and options that we can investigate and look into, so we can create that trust in a public transport network and create that engagement with the public transport network, so we can compete with other sort of modalities, be that Uber or whatever, to keep patronage high. We'll move on to some questions. If anybody has any questions, please drop them in the chat, and I will dish them out to our panel today. Yeah, we can go from there. We've got a couple coming there. So perhaps one for Amy. People often look to big cities like London, Birmingham, and Manchester when talking about examples of providing data to passengers. How can we provide the same level of experience for smaller cities, towns, and operators? Okay, so do you see any distinction there, Amy? Is that something?
Yeah, thanks, Guy. I think it's a really good point. And I suppose that the thing that immediately jumps to my mind is that, in a way, in those more rural areas, actually the importance of good quality data increases even more. And so one of the things that Stevie was talking about was the potential for people to, in urban areas, kind of adopt a kind of show up and go kind of approach to catching public transport, because the frequency of the services is likely to be higher in urban areas. In more rural areas, passengers are unlikely to have that level of frequency of services. And so if anything, the importance of the data grows in that case, because they need more information, especially if there is disruption to the services. So I think that in terms of how to achieve that, what is great now is that we have probably a reduced reliance on street information. Now there is obviously a sector of the demographics that would still kind of depend on that, but largely the vast majority of people now do own a mobile phone, and even my 75-year-old dad does his kind of bus journey planning on an app and things. And so at least in that respect, we are able to give a much more consistent experience regardless of where people are in the country. So kind of similar success factors in terms of the importance of data, hopefully some kind of easier ways to get that data out to passengers now, even in rural areas.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I think to build off the back of that, Andy Swarbrick has asked whether data works better for larger scale operators. Is there a minimum worthwhile size, e.g. we have 3 buses? And I think to pick up that question, us as a sort of app provider, we want to be able to support operators of any size. So whether we're integrating with large scale data sources, or whether we're working in the context of 3 buses, we want to be able to provide a solution. So for in cases where maybe there aren't bespoke data sets, we can integrate with something like BODs to consume data from there, or even if not BODs, we can consume schedules that are provided to us directly. We can provide solutions so that you can generate RTI data if you don't have any of the sort of infrastructure that you might expect from a large operator. And forgive me, I'm not sure whether you have any sort of ticketer or ETM machines, but we can plug a gap there to then generate the data. I think, is there a minimum worthwhile size? I think data is valuable to passengers is how I see it, whether you have 2 passengers or 200,000 passengers. I think data is important in empowering their passenger experience. So we as a technology supplier want to find solutions to get that data to however large an audience. Got another question in here that I think would be good for Amy. What can technology partners and innovators do to improve the access of complex data to passengers and end users?
Yeah, I think a great question. I guess it is complicated, as we talked about earlier on, because there's lots of different data types that make up the kind of data ecosystem. They come in different formats and different levels of richness. I think adopting common open data standards is super important, and so the Bus Open Data Platform is an example of an initiative that the Department for Transport in the UK has undertaken, where it's opening up data in a really consistent, interoperable format, and also making it available in developer-friendly formats like GTFS, which is a little easier for some people coming in new to the market to work with than some of the traditional formats like TransExchange and Siri, etc. So I think working with your providers on the data formats, making sure that they're interoperable, and I know that that's a challenge that a lot of operators and local authorities are still overcoming, is the interoperability aspect to the data. But I think that we're seeing some really great progress in that respect, and so just keep on working with partners and with specialists in the industry to help you open up that data and allow it to be kind of meshed together with other data sources to create that really rich passenger experience.
Yeah, and I think picking up off the back of that comment too, we have a question here that's sort of saying, yesterday I made a 4-mile journey, which required 3 different competing operators, so 3 different apps. And I think we're a supplier who we're agnostic to the data in terms of from an operator perspective, so we can consume lots of data sets and we can then surface them through one app. So we can facilitate that interoperability if the political will is there, say, or whatever commercial kind of frameworks need to be put in place to then provide both the public transport data all in one place, but also the ticketing experience all in one place too. So that's something we're flexible to and can support if we can get the framework in place to deliver it. Question for Stevie here, I think. How effective at the moment are operators with data, and how do you see this changing perhaps? So for example, do you see operators increasing headcount for something like relating to data, e.g. a data analyst, or what's your perspective on the data challenges?
I think that operators have always been quite good with data in terms of how it's used and how it's managed. Traditionally, if you think about sort of the art of scheduling and the days that schedules were created, literally crafted by hand on paper, and there's definitely a real skill to that, and there's always been a wealth of data. I think where traditionally there are gaps are in terms of how do you present that, particularly to different parts of the business or to different stakeholders when you think that your operation does something and you're trying to demonstrate it in a nice visual way. And there's been a whole bunch of developments in the industry, I guess. People are looking at Power BI and all the kind of different ways that this can be explained. Whether I think that there'd be more of a headcount internally for analysts, that kind of thing. I mean, we've always had a dedicated part of the commercial team that analyzes the network, and I think that the data is part of it. But there's a chunk of experience and knowledge and skill that comes from really understanding the network. And I suppose data only tells you half of the story, and you need to be able to map that to other things. So anything that brings in those alternative sources automatically, i.e. what was the weather doing? Was it a public holiday in a part of the UK at the time? Were the schools in? Was something on strike? Something that automatically takes those kind of notes and helps feed into the overall picture is going to make it more efficient. But I think you'll still need the skill and the experience to be able to make sense of it. Yeah, so that wasn't really a straight answer. I think it's developing.
Yeah, and I think looking to the future, then, what do you see potentially as the biggest change in customer behavioural demands that this new app or better use of data might help you address potentially?
So I think getting back to the trust and the convenience element. So as we've outlined, we've had real-time information in the city for a very long time. We're currently midway through a large-scale upgrade process of the equipment on our vehicles that powers that real-time information. There's a whole kind of evolution in the technology that's building the data, and for me the end result is very much the same. It's still the same things that we talked about, which are how do I get to where I want to go on public transport, what time should I be at the bus stop, and what time will I get to where I'm going. But the quality of the data will improve the accuracy of that, and will continue to improve the accuracy of that if we can get even more kind of even more rich data seems into that. That's for me, the goal is just to keep pushing at that, see if we can make it simpler, faster. And the bit where it's interesting, the bit where the innovation comes in, is for me dependent on what the device manufacturers and the operating systems do. If they unlock a part of the device or a part of the operating system to the app developers to then, oh, you've now got this new thing to play with, then that's where the excitement comes in. And are we always keeping an eye on what's coming in the next version of iOS or Android, and how are we going to harness that and use it to bring to life the data in another way?
Cool. Thanks, Stevie. We've got a question here which is what's the most exciting or innovative use of data that you've seen to provide that improved customer experience that you're pushing for. So I think I can probably pick up and give some answers to this one. I think some of the stuff I covered today, such as occupancy predictions, are examples of really innovative ways in which you take a sort of base set of data and then you do something with it to make it really useful. So, you know, I think as I was discussing, just telling someone how busy a bus is as it's coming towards them is actually not a very useful piece of information necessarily, because, you know, people are going to get off that bus at the stop, and, you know, whilst it could be full as it's approaching the stop, it could be empty when it leaves. So if you just tell someone that the bus is currently full, they might go, well, I'm not going to travel, or I'll travel later. But that's actually not giving them the full picture. So, you know, in this case, we've built something that our occupancy predictions engine, so that we can take the historic data from the whole route and model how busy that bus will be when it leaves the stop, or once everybody's got off and the passenger then gets on. And that's the information the passenger wants. I think that's a good example of an innovative use of data. And Stevie just mentioned there sort of about using native tools in iOS or Android. And I think a great example of where we've looked to do that is our iOS sort of live widgets. So and Android widgets, where you can track a vehicle. You can go into the app, you can watch a vehicle, and you can track it from your device on other screens. So you can go away and do other stuff on your phone, and you can see a countdown of your vehicle approaching. So you can watch your vehicle, and if you want to steal a few extra minutes at the breakfast table in the morning before you dash for your bus, then you can very easily monitor your service without needing to have an app open and be staring at it all the time. But we've had a couple of comments come in relating to mobile phones, and, you know, not everyone has a phone, or there's poor mobile connection in certain rural areas or other areas. And I can speak to that in that we also provide a web experience, so that, you know, passengers can get the same sort of rich passenger experience from a website, and then, you know, go off and make those journeys using the information that they've gathered through an online passenger experience on a website. But equally, you know, and that could also be done at home with a mobile. I think there are limitations about you know, data connection, and I think that's certainly something we can investigate in the future in terms of any offline storage of trip data that someone then can, you know, load at home and travel off into the world with. I think that could be a potential solution to that could be explored. But I thought I'd also open that innovation question to Amy and Stevie. Is there any examples of innovative data usage that you have?
I have an example that I was really impressed to see some time ago, which was the NHS Wales kind of travel team internally. I saw some work that they did using the Bus Open Data service, where they looked at the availability of public transport for their NHS workers, and they mapped essentially what was a kind of transport poverty view onto South Wales, and they looked at for their staff working in whichever hospitals across South Wales, at what time would they need to leave their home from somewhere in the catchment area across the South Wales valleys in order to get to their workplace at, say, 9 o'clock in the morning, and they could toggle between lots of different times throughout the day. And it was really startling to see this kind of heat map of, there are particular areas that are really well served and they could reach their destination in a really reasonable amount of time. And then what was really apparent was there are certain areas where you would have to leave 6 hours before your shift started, or you actually don't have any public transport options available to you at all. And I just thought it was a really, really innovative use of data that created such a visual representation of where those gaps in public transport provision are, And so I think that really shows, the power of opening up data across different operators. I know that there's quite a bit of discussion in the chat at the moment about lack of interoperability and different apps, different operators, different tickets, etc. And so I think that opening up data in the first place is a really key aspect to improving this experience for all passengers, and so both in terms of tackling those challenges and also in terms of understanding the challenges for passengers. I thought that was a really great example. I can see, Roger, that you've asked about did they do something similar for patients? I'm not actually sure, is the honest answer. I saw their work for mapping the transport options for their staff. I imagine that they probably did some work also about patients, because obviously super important for both their staff and their patients getting into hospitals, exploring what their public transport access is like.
Thank you, Amy. And Stevie, any examples yourself that come to mind?
I mean, it's going back a while, but I've been doing this a while, so that's okay. When we first started kind of integrating the API for Bus Tracker and realizing that real-time information was available, and watching what the developer community in Edinburgh did with it, one of the first things that was notable was when someone overlaid all the bus locations on a map, and you could see them all moving around the network in real time. And it doesn't sound like a big deal now, but going back over a decade, it was really powerful just to see how the network was moving around in real time and to get that real time view. More recently, I think some of the cool stuff that I've seen is around how various different providers are working together to provide insights into things like your charges for tap and cap and stuff like that. So how you can view how your individual journeys were made up, how caps were applied, and how, if you're selling to customers, the value in that payment method is you don't have to think about it, we'll work it out for you. But for a lot of people, that's fine. They don't really care. But equally, there are a lot of people who do want to know, well, what was that daily charge made up of? How much was each journey? And they want that information. So again, being able to provide that to customers, I thought was a really cool kind of feature. But I do find, and not to detract too much, but some of the comments in the chat about people that don't have smartphones, people who don't use apps, and there is definitely, even in a big city like Edinburgh, where perhaps unlike many other cities, we are owned by the local authority, so we're owned by the community, and there's definitely that need to continue to be accessible and to find a way to embrace everyone. And even in the city, we have some real dead spots where you get the kind of urban canyon effect where all connectivity drops, and it's how you manage all of that stuff. Despite getting, talking about the advantages and the richness of all this data that it provides, we still need to understand how we continue to operate where it's not available, and how we can kind of handle all of that. And it still amazes me that we're parts of the network where connectivity is just not there. So
yeah, thank you, Stevie. I think just to sort of build off those questions about innovative use of data, we've got one more question here that I'll pick up, which was, can previous purchase data in your apps be used to prompt passengers to repurchase? And the answer is actually yes. So that's another, I think, great example of how we can use the data that we generate as well as an app supplier to then go and build on and enrich the passenger experience from that. So as people make purchases through our app, we can obviously get data about the time those purchases are made. And then we can fine tune notifications to passengers and go, well, okay, passengers typically repurchase a ticket, 1 day after their previous ticket expired. So we can time a notification to go out to them and say, hey, you need to your ticket expired, would you like to buy another one, and prompt them to purchase another ticket. So we kind of keep that engagement with the network and with the mobile ticketing experience. So I think, yeah, there's another good example there, like questions raised of an individual use of data. Okay, I think we'll wrap it up there, and I really appreciate everyone's questions today, and your time too. It's been a pleasure to discuss data with you, and I think, yeah, the many challenges but also opportunities that we have, and the many solutions that I think a technology supplier like UrbanThings can help to unlock. So if you have any subsequent questions or like to get in touch, please reach out to us. There are some contact details on the screen there, and I'm sure we'll be following up with you to share any details, slides, etc. So yeah, thank you for your time, and enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you.